All right, welcome to the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust meeting of Thursday, August 10th, 2023. It is 9:02, and we are in Memorial Hall in Town Hall. This meeting will be recorded, it is being recorded, and will be put up probably later today on Westborough TV for those who wish to watch it. So we have a call to order. Do we want to do approval minutes or?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only issue that I had mentioned earlier, we're going to do July
10th first. First one is July 10th. It's the one pager.
Yeah, July 10th, which was a remote meeting. And I didn't notice anything. Basically, we moved to executive session. That was the only thing that we did, and it was regard to the purchase of 3 baler, and that was about it. I don't see any changes. I didn't notice anything that was wrong. So, do you hear a motion for acceptance?
Sure. I move to approve the minutes of the July 10th, 2023 meeting as presented.
Second.
Okay. All those.
Roll call vote.
Roll call vote.
Edinburgh, yes.
Bain, yes.
Salzman, yes.
Rouse, yes.
Okay, good. All right. Next set of minutes is for the 13th of July. And there are just some minor timing changes under present. The arrive at 9:10 should be after Roush instead of Bain. And then the times on the call to order and approval of minutes, it should be 9 a.m. for the call to order, and it should be 9:05 for approval.
No, 9:05 is when we actually call to order. It should be
okay.
9:05 for both.
For both, okay. All right. If anybody have any other changes or corrections? Hearing none, I'll request a motion to approve minutes for July 13th.
I move. Oh, Ken?
Second.
Oh, okay. Let me make the motion. I move to approve the minutes for July 13th, 2023 as amended.
Salzman, second.
Excellent. Roll call vote. Roll call vote. Edinburgh, yes.
Bain, yes.
Salzman, yes.
Rouse, yes.
Okay, good. Thank you, folks. Okay, next, just a status on 3 Baylor Avenue. What we're doing is the attorneys have been going back and forth on the PS. From what it looks like, they're pretty close. I haven't gotten an update in the past few days. I will reach out again to our counsel, Sharon, and try to find where are they in, there didn't seem to be any significant disagreement, just some, I'll say, tuning. So I will follow on that. We are ready to close. There's no big deal because it's only a $1 transfer to us for the property and the signing of the PNS and LDA. Next would be 6 Beach Street. And right now, the closing, the seller's attorney is away on vacation. However, one of the things that we became aware of from counsel was that because of the income from the sale, the proceeds from the sale, they will not need to go through bankruptcy court, that they will have sufficient funds to settle all their debts, both the mortgage and other debts. My only, and I think I sent this out, and I don't know if I sent it to everybody, but there was some concern about the tenant finding, because of the bankruptcy situation, other places that will be welcoming, i.e. there's concern about payment of, because there was 5-year mortgage non-payment, that they'll be able to pay rent, HOA, if it's a condo, et cetera, et cetera. So the realtor is working diligently on that, and I'll once again touch base with him in the next few days, maybe Monday, and see how they're doing. But he is very much motivated to make this all happen. So we have
Yeah.
one guy who's really on the case, because if he doesn't get his commission.
So, yeah, so
Yeah, go ahead, Alan.
it's we were advised that the seller hasn't finalized subsequent housing.
As of earlier this week. Correct. Although there is
but because of this transaction, the seller no longer needs to be in bankruptcy, so that's not a hit on the credit report, which should make that a little bit easier going forward. We can't get involved in the seller's credit history and things of that nature.
No, we can't, but it is obviously something that is on their credit report. It may not be bankruptcy, but it is the failure to pay.
Right.
Which of course hits them. So anyhow, there is a moving pod sitting in the driveway. Okay. I drove by this earlier this week, and it is filling up. I see crates and stuff in there, so, and the chicken coop is gone. So things are in the process, are in the works on that, with that. Any questions on Beach Street? I
I
did.
believe we've authorized you to sign the P&S when it gets cut.
That's going to be the next item on the agenda. I did send out to Ken, to you and Hank, action items for the Beach Street task list. That just shows what needs to be done before closing, at closing, and after closing. I would ask you to please review that. Did you get the copy? I can give you a hard copy if you want.
I'll take that.
Take that.
Yeah.
And
I do have.
add to it, but basically, we just want to make sure things, change locks and things like that. The insurance is in place as we speak, although since we haven't passed title, it's really not applicable. But basically, we have a policy on both Baylor and Beach at that point. Okay. Any other questions on Beach issues? Okay, moving down.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Catch up. Okay. Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Yep.
All right, next thing I would ask, as chair, if the trustees would authorize me to sign both the purchase and sale and closing documents related to 3 Baylor and 6 Beach. 3 Baylor requires still both the P&S and the deed, the closing documents. Beach Street, we've done the P&S, it's only the
I
closing.
have 2 motions.
So I don't know if we want to do that as 2 motions?
Sure.
Okay.
That probably needs to be 2 motions because they're separate transactions.
Okay, that's fine,
Yeah,
that's fine.
absolutely. So I move to authorize the chair to sign the purchase and sale agreement and to finalize and sign subsequent closing documents for 3 Baylor Avenue as advised by council.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? I'll take a roll call vote.
Edinburgh, yes?
Bain,
Roush,
yes?
Salzman, yes.
Okay, and Hank chimed in, yes. Okay. So that's for,
Are you Bain, yes?
Bain, yes.
Okay. Okay, and then I move to authorize the chair to finalize and sign closing documents for 6 Beach Street as advised by council.
Need a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Edinburgh, yes?
Bain, yes?
Salzman, yes.
Roush, yes.
Okay, good, thank you. That'll just move things along. I don't think I need to verify that with town council, that as long as I'm duly authorized, they can put that on the doc, on the closing document.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just if there's if you have a question, you go.
Right, I just, because sometimes on the documents, you see multiple
Yeah.
signature lines. Okay, next, if, Hank, you've been doing some work on the 45 High Street extension.
Yep, sent out some notes from WDA Design Associates. They sent a team of 2 folks, a wildlife biologist and an engineer, project manager engineer, to do a site review. And they discovered, they found a few things we weren't aware of or hadn't thought about. The notes the notes that I wrote up are from that. In summary, I've got more detail if we need it. There is a large depression. We knew there was a large depression. We now got some idea of how big it is. Oh, by the way, it was wet when they went out there. Had a couple inches of water in it, and there was evidence in the surrounding area that it may or may not be a vegetated wetland. If it's a vegetated wetland, it will be very difficult to fill it. So we got to get the conservation agent and the wildlife biologist to agree whether it is or isn't a vegetated wetland and what has to be done with it. At some point, we will also need to flag the boundaries of there is a vegetated wetland in the back quarter. We need to flag those boundaries because they delineate buffer zones where you can't build or can't disturb or can't do things.
Right.
So that has to be done. They're suggesting we really can't do that till September, October, depending on the weather. Just got to let that pit dry out and that area dry out before we go out there with the conservation agent. So that'll take a while.
Okay, so we have a couple of months of,
Yeah.
we're in August, probably late September, early October. Would be best, once, some of the was it every other day rain subsides.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other question we got from the engineer was, we had sent a schematic approach with 4 buildings on the site. And, the question is, the footprint of the building as indicated is different than the square footage. So the question is hey, are we looking at duplexes? Are those buildings intended to be duplexes? Are they intended to be, I think it's 1,400 or 1,500 square foot individual houses? And, are we willing to deal with a smaller property, a smaller house, because they can fit them on there easier?
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure whether those were intended to be single homes or duplexes.
So the footprints that on our concept plan were assuming 1,200 square foot and likely single family, but potentially 2-story. So the footprint's smaller than the square footage.
So I'll work with them to adjust the dimensions. You're looking at 1,200 square foot single family, and whatever that footprint comes out to be.
Yeah, I think some of the boxes I drew on the plan, it was not ultra scientific. It was, Google Slides. The footprints are 40 by 30. As I drew them.
That would be a single story, 1,200 square foot.
Right, but they could be, they could be 2-story, 1,200 square foot if the footprint needs to be smaller.
Okay, we'll communicate with them.
Or we could make them a little larger, put fewer, like maybe instead of 4, just do 3 duplexes. If that works, we can.
Yeah.
I think some of the, in our whole timing, we would like to, as we've discussed, possibly look at both 45 high, if that does, come to fruition, that is a developable property, as well as beach, and, try to use similar, I'll say construction, types of units, if for no other reason, if we can get a developer that would be more cost effective for them to do, 5, 6, 7, 8 buildings that are similar, so that their engineering and design and construction is, complexity is minimized. So,
Okay.
we will, once we close on Beach, we should start a process of saying, well, what are some possibilities here for that property after we've done our evaluation of the house, et cetera. Okay. All right, thanks, Hank. So we're basically on hold until,
On hold until we get out there with the conservation agent.
sounds good. Now, conservation agent from Westborough or?
Westborough Conservation Agent.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, okay.
Jennifer, I think Jennifer Miller's her name, first name's Jennifer.
Oh, right.
Miller's-
Yep. Now I remember. Okay, good. Thanks, Hank. Appreciate your diligence.
Ken's on board, Ken's seen all the stuff I've seen, so.
Okay. All right, good. All right, we're right on time here. Moving on, the next item is the first-time homebuyers program.
Okay, so not much of an update. I'm still waiting for updated documents and some additional information from other programs and trusts that are doing this, or in process of doing it. Once I have those, Ms. Storm and I will meet.
Yeah.
We'll sort of outline how we want our program to work, and we'll bring it back to the trust.
Okay.
So
The
I'm
biggest
hoping-
thing
I'm
is,
hoping we'll
what's
have
the
that.
name we use?
We got to come up with a catchy name. We've learned that, but it's also, will it be grants or loans? If it's a grant, if it's a loan, will it convert to grant based on longevity in the property? What would that look like? Finalizing, we're pretty set on qualifications as far as using the one mortgage as a benchmark.
Yeah, as a benchmark.
Because that's the easiest to define and administratively as well. And so we'll come back with that. I expect we'll have that for our September meeting.
Okay, great. I'm just making a note for myself here on. Okay. Next item on the list is the status on WHA and Rogers Road development.
Yep, a couple of things there. I mean, first thing is, I believe the Housing Authority has decided that putting attempting to put a lift in the building isn't the direction they want to go in, and that project or opportunity's been shelved. It's not going to give them the results they want, or again, they're not pushing for that at this point anymore. Their board has kind of backed away from it. We met with two folks from the Housing Authority board in July, Kate and I, and we're going to be meeting again with them next week. We're trying to get the executive director, who's new, and the board a little more up to speed and on board with where we're going. In the meantime, we secured a proposal from a consulting organization. Happens to be the consultant is the Cambridge Housing Authority, who in addition to running their housing authority, has a side business doing consulting for other affordable housing development, particularly housing authority folks. We went to them and said, what would it take to what kind of support could you give us? What would it cost approximately to go through a pre-permitting assessment process that would get us to the point where we identify funding sources and feasibility and things of that sort. And they came back with a quote that's just shy of $150,000 and probably an 18-month time cycle. And that we need to, the Housing Authority board needs to kind of decide whether they really want to go at, whether they're ready to engage with that kind of an approach, and then figure out where the funding would come from. They will probably come to us looking for seed funding for some or all of that amount, but we now understand roughly what it's going to cost to get through the pre-permitting stage. I don't know where that's going to go. It's probably going to take a few months for the Housing Authority to come on board and understand what needs to be done. And quite honestly, the Housing Authority Board's objective would be to expand their current portfolio of properties from the current 110 to somewhere around 200 units over a period of time. The problem they're trying to solve two problems. They're trying to get larger to achieve an economy of scale in running their business. They also have an upcoming, in the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to have to do major renovations to many of their properties. When they do that, they need to have a way of taking the existing tenants and providing them with alternative housing, do the renovations, and then acquire new tenants. In order for that kind of a process to work, you probably have to build some new units, move the old tenants into new units, renovate the old units, and bring on new tenants. It's not clear that Rogers Road is going to be big enough to support that need. So I really don't know where that board's going to come out, but we're making progress in defining the problem and getting an understanding of what it will take to solve the problem.
Okay.
Okay. Appreciate your work with them, and obviously I guess their impetus or their motivation is they are very desirous of expanding to the 200 unit level, within their property, within their management portfolio.
Yeah, they've got a real conundrum that if they try to expand, they've got to expand their staff. Today, they're marginally financially viable today. So to expand their staff, they've got to find new sources of income.
Right.
I've never seen any financials.
Yes.
A suggestion, if at some point they come forward and say, gee, we'd really like the Housing Trust to provide seed funding, $100,000 to $150,000, we're going to need to do some due diligence on their financial viability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, the theory is because they're a small housing authority and they don't get an operating subsidy from the state, that the increase in rental income would provide the funding for the increase in staff and resources they would need.
Right.
Right? Now, of course, if you're constructing, you have to worry potentially about debt service on construction as well if it's funded by loans as opposed to grants. The good news, and we haven't seen the details of it, is the $10 billion bond specifically for the renovation and expansion of affordable housing owned and operated by housing authorities. And so as you meet with the working group, you and Kate and their representatives from the Housing Authority meet next week, I would ask that you please stress the urgency of moving forward very quickly so that as the state announces how that money is accessible, that we are as far along in the process as possible, because oftentimes the closer you are to shovel ready, the better off you are in getting the money if you're an early asker.
Yeah, fortunately, the Cambridge Housing Authority, this consultant, has a really good understanding of how to go find funding and the state funding sources and such. And they also have the ability to do the financial modeling and such to go forward asking for grants, loans, etc.
Okay.
Given that the clientele that's served by the Housing Authority is essentially 30 to 50% of AMI, it's very difficult to come up with rentals that cover the cost of operating the property, no less cover the investment amortization. So a very large fraction of the construction cost has to be grants. It can't be loans because they can't service them.
Right, and there also are, I'm aware of some other loan programs. So for example, the fact that Westborough has fewer than 50,000 residents, we should qualify any housing development that wants affordable units. in Westborough, whether it's public housing or privately developed, should qualify for a loan program, for example, that will provide up to $200,000 in funding per unit. And it's a 50-year loan that's 0% amortization. And so it's, in 0% interest. And so that type of structure, if we were to look at it and say, gee, we're going to do a 5-home project, and we're going to tap that program for $1 million, and in 50 years we owe $1 million, it's not that difficult to figure out how much money we need to invest now to generate $1 million over 50 years, and it's a small fraction of that. And so there's a lot, I know the consultant will know more, but there's a lot of potential creativity, and this new bond will open up new programs.
Right.
And I guess my concern is that we are as ready as we can be when, 2-3 months from now, when the state says, oh, we're going to have this $10 billion, here's the first program on how housing authorities can use it, that we are as far along as possible so we're ready to start applying. Even if, okay, excellent.
So anything we can do, I guess, just to summarize, although Alan spoke eloquently, is the more we can do to, with the housing authority, to impress upon them the importance of moving quickly is important, because just because of the hopefully availability of the bond offering and subsequent pool of money. Okay.
It might even be helpful if the housing authority simply reached out to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities to indicate that as a housing authority they have available land and are currently investigating the feasibility of developing several dozen units, and therefore want to be in the loop and are interested in these funds as they become available.
Right.
And
And
just sort of
anything they can do now.
Even though we're at the infant stage, get this on the radar of the folks at the state.
Yep, we're gonna get their, ED on board. Their ED
Oh, agreed.
hardly even knows what's going on here, as far as I can tell. Kate and I have also requested that we be invited to address the board and fill the board in directly on, what's going on here, and what sort of support the board needs to provide.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. And once again, stress time is of the essence with this situation. Okay, great. Thanks, Hank.
One quick question. Hank, can you invite the new executive director as she's available to come to one of our future meetings so we can officially welcome her and greet her?
Yeah.
Sure.
Our next meeting, will be in September.
So,
Yep.
okay. Thank you.
And that I will be away, but it can be remote.
Okay.
I'll
we'll do it.
acceptable. And I'll have better satellite connection, I promise, than Hank. Moving on. Again, on Hank, you had sent out a flyer and a little bit of a blurb about a program, a small grants program. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? You sent out one.
We had the conversation that one of our objectives is to allow low-income folks to stay in their home and age in place and things of that sort.
Yep.
And that sometimes an impediment to that is that there's home repairs that are needed, that the folks need a subsidy to accomplish. Things like handicap accessibility ramps, roof replacements, things of that sort, furnace replacements, I was aware that a number of other housing authorities, the one I'm familiar with is Sudbury, had a small grant program, so I pulled that flyer. Their fiscal year 2022 budget for that program was $20,000. The typical small grant that they grant, I looked at some of their meetings, and they're talking 1,500, 2,000. Oh, the small grants are all under $5,000, so they are small. They've got a third-party consultant who does all the management of the grant program, so that the board, the volunteer board doesn't have to vet people and investigate their paperwork and such. Pretty simple, straightforward program. If we have more interest, we could pull some more things of that sort and start talking about putting something together. If the community, I expect the community needs it. I really don't know whether the community needs it.
Well, so I think, one of the things is I'm, as people probably know, I'm on this, there was a senior needs assessment done. 1,500 responded. These are 55 plus or 50 plus aged residents. And we have some stats on how many people, one of the questions was if you had could you afford a $500, fix of something in your house, and what percentage said yes or no and things like that. So we do have some numbers, and there is a need. The senior center does provide some very, very basic handyman stuff, but nothing where, we're doing any kind of where you would need to get a professional in, especially any electric and, things that would require either permitting or inspection by building. I don't think the handyman is up to that. He can put in smoke alarms and minor, fixed faucets and stuff like that. So this may be a worthwhile thing, a worthwhile initiative. I can bring it to that group because this is primarily, well, actually, this isn't just for seniors. This is for anybody, low income. Anybody?
Yeah, it is for anybody. Definitely for anybody.
Right.
If I may?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would suggest bringing it to the working group.
Yeah.
And that we can, if we want to move forward with this type of program, we can allocate for everyone. If we wanted to, I think it would also be good to discuss with our senior center director and the council on aging. We could have a two-pronged program. We could say we have these funds available for everyone, a certain percentage of which are earmarked for specifically to address the needs as expressed from the senior needs assessment for the senior population.
Right. So it'd be
and those
age
types
restricted.
of services.
Right.
And work cooperatively with the senior center where the requests could go to the senior center if it's beyond the scope or capacity of the handyman service that they have. I believe it's currently funded with grants in their operating budget. Then they would refer folks to our program.
Right. Right. They could do the initial assessment, and then there is, as you said, just like we use the Metro West Cooperative to do the SARA management, the paperwork, the tracking, et cetera, applications. There is somebody that Sudbury uses to do that, which would probably make sense. So, yeah, this is, let me bring this up. I'll shoot an email. I'll take this copy. I'll send it out to Kim Foster, who's heading up this working group. And then there's like 6 of us on that working group, including, Alma DeMonch, who's the director of the senior center, and also probably should send a copy to the president of the COA for,
I would talk to Alma first, but yeah.
Huh? I would just give Alma a heads up and then say, I just want to send this out for a discussion at our next meeting, just so that Kim gets it on the agenda. Okay. Thanks, Hank.
Yes, thank you.
Do we have any limitations as a trust on renovation stuff. I know if it's a DHCD-owned property, there's some issues, but if this
Well,
is just
so-
a needs.
There are some general guidelines about what the trust can spend money on,
Right.
and we'd look at the details of these programs to see how they're worded and what's within scope and what's allowed for reimbursement. This isn't, it's interesting that Sudbury's using
Their
funds
housing trust.
from the CPA, is what Hank had
Oh,
indicated.
the heading,
Right.
oh, okay, in the email,
Right,
right.
so we would just have to look into that just to make sure that the scope of the program and the funding is compliant.
Okay.
You know, if other trusts are doing it, they've worked through those issues.
They work there, and we can ask them just.
And for their
with-
templates,
with-
so.
With that. And what a lead-in for the next item on the agenda,
Yes.
which is Communication Preservation Committee designee. As we know, we have approved the CPA, and I don't know when that will start. When will we see that on our tax bills? Will that be in
I think
the
it
next
starts
tax
this
bill?
fiscal year.
It's,
This fiscal year, which is, we should see an October bill?
is it 24 or 25? Yeah, I'm not totally sure when it'll.
Okay, all right. But anyhow,
When it'll show
there
up
is
in
a request, because they are forming up the group that will actually,
We should wait for Ken to return.
oh, I'm
We
sorry,
don't
yeah.
have a quorum right now, so.
Yeah, we had, well,
We're going to take, Hank, we're going to take a brief intermission because Ken stepped out for a second.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, okay.
yeah, we're in recess. And we'll come back to that.
No commercial sponsor. I was thinking the same thing.
This recording is brought to you by Westborough TV, one of the best cable TV providers within the Commonwealth. We were in recess until you came back.
Keep the quorum.
Quorum. All right. So we're moving on. Started to talk about the community preservation, community designee. And just to repeat, the town voted to incorporate the CPA tax into, for Westborough. And subsequently, once that was approved, one of the next steps was to create the actual preservation committee, which would decide as funds flow in, where there's certain percentages that go to, like we get 10% of any funds, the housing trust, and then other departments or commissions get, fixed amounts, and then there's a other pool to be decided. And what they do is they have a committee that goes through and makes those decisions as necessary. They have asked, the town has asked for us to choose a community designee. And I told them we would do a vote on that this week, at this meeting. So basically, this is somebody, they're probably going to meet a few times a year and review projects and needs across historic preservation, affordable housing, et cetera, and then make some decisions. So it's not, I don't think it'll be a lot of work, from what I understand. And I would like if we have anybody that's interested, or even if they're not interested, they're not here. I mean, I'm willing to start out. I mean, I'm sure that this is, initially, there's not going to be a lot going on. I'm happy to do it, as I am with the senior assessment. But if somebody else, in their copious spare time, I don't see anybody rushing the table. Questions about it?
Yeah, I'd love to do it. I can't make the time commitment. This is my select board responsibilities.
I mean, I can for now. They need a list of names. We can always change the name.
Okay.
So when we have...
And I think it'd be a great name.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
thanks, Hank.
I move we appoint Mr. Ed Bain, as the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust's representative on the Community Preservation Committee.
Okay.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Edinburgh, yes?
Bain, yes.
Salzman, yes.
Roush, yes.
Okay. All right. The next point is, in conclusion, no, our Westborough TV person came in. Is Fall Town Meeting, which is coming up October. I don't have the date, Alan, you probably have it memorized, but 17th or so. Okay. We have at least one article, which is, as we mentioned at our last meeting, the town settled with the Highlands their, let's say, just legal discussion. And as a result, the Highlands agreed to pay $950,000 in lieu of providing affordable units at their location. So the $950,000 is, has come in. I assume it's been paid. Is in free cash, and there will be an article to transfer that from free cash to the trust. And it will be very similar to our spring meeting, town meeting, where I asked the transfer of the 600+ thousand.
So that article is actually going to be sponsored by the select board?
Right, the select board will do it.
It's related to litigation.
Right, so, they might ask me to speak to it, or they may you may probably be the one to propose it and then answer questions, so.
And the presentation is that with the understanding that there's no guarantee the funds will be transferred, a warrant article to transfer the funds is a stipulation of the settlement agreement.
Right.
So
we're sort of legally bound to transfer it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if somebody gets up and starts to argue about, well, do we need affordable housing, things like that, and we say, you're out of, and maybe we tell John, no, I'm serious, because, some people get off and whereas this is, no, we have an obligation to do this legally. It's not, regardless of your views on other issues. Not that we had a big problem last time, but we had a little bit of whining, or discussion, I should say. All right. Now, you were submitted a bylaw and a charter amendment. I wanted to put this on here if you want to discuss it.
It's in the packet, the initial wording. It hasn't been reviewed by council yet. If you recall, earlier this year, we voted to, should the select board agree to take responsibility as the appointing authority and potentially serve as the Housing Partnership Committee.
Yep.
That is allowable under Mass General Law. We would need a specific amendment to our declaration of trust, should that happen.
Okay.
Which also means an identical change to the bylaw, because it's in the powers section, which is included in the bylaw. And because the town charter has the select board as the appointing authority, there would be an amendment to the charter that would allow the select board to delegate the appointing authority to a house. It's written generically, so it could be to any housing trust. that is affiliated with the town. So
Okay.
us or any subsequent trust in the future.
Right.
You sort of have to make these things longevity. What that would mean is that the select board, under the charter, would be authorized to vote to identify the trust as the appointing authority and/or the Housing Partnership Committee, and that the select board down the road, one of the questions, this was discussed at our meeting this week, one of the questions asked was, well, we've got a really great trust now, it's very active. What happens if things change and it's not the best fit anymore? The select board would be able to vote to restore its appointing authority, and that would happen. So that's out there. The one question outstanding from the select board is there are other communities where this has been done. And the question is, well, what if there's a potential conflict where where the housing trust is looking at a property and a private developer is also interested in that property? The Housing Partnership Committee's role is to help the developer navigate the permitting process as it relates to affordable housing and to help identify subsidies and funding to make that more viable as a way of encouraging, even beyond the statutory minimums we have in our zoning. Would that be seen as a conflict with the work of the trust?
Right.
And how would the trust handle that? So I'll be reaching out to some other trusts just to
see how
what
they
do.
dealt.
My expectation is that the rule of thumb will be if there's a private developer who's going to construct affordable housing, that the trust would say, go for it. That our interest in the property would then wane because
We have somebody to do
private
it.
development is more efficient. And that the trust's role would then become potentially a component of subsidy.
Subsidy, right, financial
Right. And
facilitation.
not as a lead developer, not the one issuing the RFP, so.
Okay, good. So that's going through, you're trying to figure out if you can get all the i's dotted, t's crossed on that.
Yeah.
Then submit it and,
And the other request is that we discuss this with the planning board. I mean, not this aspect, I'm sorry. With the other responsibilities we talked about taking on, including the monitoring agent,
right,
there was a request that we have a conversation. I'll reach out to the chair of the planning board
okay.
because we're talking about the relationship between the trust and the planning director who reports to the
Jenny.
planning board.
Right. Jennifer
Yeah.
Gingras, just to, okay, who I have met with, which actually, okay, leads me into another segue, which is subsidized housing inventory. And, we have been working on, I'm just looking for my paperwork. I just put it as other business.
Okay.
I'm bringing it up as other business. One of the things, we have our properties identified. The trick here is to try to identify who submits on an annual basis, the initial report on their adherence to the affordable units under their management, and then a monitoring mechanism to go and, if you will, audit as necessary. And Alan did an email to, at least to me, and maybe Jenny, really, we want to make sure that people that are in, because it probably hasn't been done in a while, still meet the criteria for those units. One thing I did is, as I have a spreadsheet that's, we're working out, between ownership, which is, we only have 66 houses or housing units that are owned.
By owned units.
By owned units. So these are ones where people buy them, like what we're going to do with Baylor, Baylor Avenue, where we will sell it to somebody that meets the affordable criteria. We have on our SHI inventory 913 rental units. So obviously the rentals weigh that. However, there are 3 properties, namely Avalon West, which is the well, we called it Avalon West. It's the residents at Westborough Station that have 120 units that go to our SHI. 24 are actually affordable. There are, at Ellington Metro West, which is off of Flanders Road, there's 280 units, but only 70, which is a good percentage, are affordable. Likewise, Park Westborough has 249 total units, 63 of which are affordable. So if you add up those numbers, we come up with 421 actual available units of rental units. The 66 still remain because they're one for one. So that gives us 487 total units. We recently got the numbers for our number of housing units, what they call year-round housing units from the state, based upon the 2020 census, and that number is 8303. Little higher than what had been estimated by, another, not quite 200 units, so it's a little higher. So we're at, given that number, if you look at our SHI inventory, we're at 11.79 or 11.8%, which is good. Heads above water above our 10% 40B. But the actual number of units that are available based upon the housing units is 5.87%. So and this is just the discussion, I just happened to have a discussion with somebody in the barbershop who's a town meeting goer, very supportive, great resident of the town, and who was questioning and was asking me, well, what's our percentage? I said, well, we're in like the 12% plus.
Can you just, for the record, the total number of SHI units?
The total number of SHI units is 979.
979.
979.
Okay. So just for clarification, the SHI percentage is the 979 as a percentage of the 8303.
Correct.
Given the accounting rules, even though the actual number of available affordable units is at 5.87.
5.87.
Okay.
Right.
Excellent.
So the point being that, somebody was saying, I said, well, we're around 12%, and they're saying, oh, gee, it looks like we've done our share. And I think one of the things if we have that kind of discussion, we could say, well, yeah, there's two methods of accounting depending upon how you want to look at this.
Right. Well, I mean, the rule for 40B, yes, 11.8% is greater, but the challenge is now is each year our SHI percentage is going to be calculated for the next 10 years.
Right.
Will be based off that 8303.
Correct.
We know that we have still hundreds of non-affordable units that will come online in that time frame.
Yes.
So that 11.8% is the best we will do for the next decade, unless we add additional affordability. If there isn't, that will decline as other units come online.
You're right.
As market rate units come online.
Right. So yeah, we got and just there is this need. We just don't. Still, if you look at what's actually available out there,
absolutely, there's still.
And I'm not sure which of these, and I'd like to go through this offline, are age restricted. Of all these rentals.
Yeah.
And or ownership. I don't think any ownership is age restricted. I think it's only the
rentals.
The rentals, some of the rentals that may be. So anyhow, we're making good progress on really getting our hands wrapped around our inventory and also just the logistics and mechanisms to ensure that we're doing an appropriate monitoring and auditing of every property to make sure they're in compliance, both on their fees that they're charging, as well as the tenants that are in there are still eligible. They didn't win the
Ed,
lottery.
Just to comment,
Yep.
I think it'd be great to take those statistics and get them, put the appropriate highlights on a single slide that, we can communicate, hey, here's what the SHI is, here's what the real affordable units are, and here's how they're distributed demographically in terms of ownership, rental, age restricted, not restricted.
Yeah, we can pull-
And oh, by the way, what's included in that? Is the housing authority included in that?
Yes.
It is. And
Yeah, again, just a kind of a brief that said as we move forward and communicate with various forums, we can say, hey, here's a more detailed look at the picture of what's going on in Westborough.
we can pull that together and have it added to our webpage.
Yeah, and I think,
we can present it at the next meeting and then post it
yeah,
so that people can look it up.
yeah.
Okay.
I think that's good. And, I know we want to be on topic on the at the Fall Town meeting. We could have some things here if people are saying, well, we have enough and this and that. And,
Right.
we're taking in, lots of other folks into town, that are being put up in the hotels. Anyhow, so that, I just wanted to bring people up to date on that. Any other business that anybody
Yes.
would like to raise? Yes, Alan?
One quick item. At a prior meeting, we, let me get this, let me share. We had provided final feedback to the team at Westborough High School working on our new logo. I am sharing it now.
Yep.
On the screen. The doors were added in the R and the H.
Yep.
Remove the yellow highlight around the wording. The single color version still has the yellow outline that we wanted in the text free and clear. The full color version, as we asked, has the yellow underline underneath it representing the sidewalk.
Right.
So I think we're there as far as all the comments and feedback being included. And if folks are interested, I would move that we accept this design as the new logo for the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust.
Second,
Yeah, looks nice. They did a nice job. Can we, I second. Or you
Hang
move.
on a second.
Second.
Yeah.
Discussion.
We're going with the
But, well, what we would do is,
It's both, so that we have a 2-color and a 4-color version.
so if we ever wanted to print something in and we only wanted to use a 2-color because of cost, then we would use the bottom one.
Okay.
But normally for, like minutes and other stuff that's, we would use probably the color.
okay, great.
Either one is acceptable, but,
Yes.
the reason we did the other one was so for printing purposes, sometimes you want
Sure.
to keep it to 2. All right. Any other questions?
No.
All right. Roll call?
Edinburgh, yes?
Dane, yes.
Salzman, yes.
Roush, yes.
Okay. Can Chair please ask the Secretary if he could inform and maybe write a letter to
Yes.
thank and inform the graphic artists at the high school, the appropriate people there, to say we've adopted this and thank you for their work,
do.
and maybe and do a CC to superintendent
Absolutely.
or or the principal.
Absolutely.
Can never spread thank yous too much.
Need to spread the love. And speaking of
spread the
spreading the love,
appreciation.
want to thank Westborough TV for their support today and ongoing with our meetings and our work. And I move we adjourn.
Second?
Okay, roll call.
Edinburgh, yes?
Bain, yes.
Salzman, yes.
Roush, yes.
Okay, thank you. We are adjourned.